So, all right. So my first story I have for us is kind of a funny one. It's about, I don't even know how to introduce it, but Italian soccer club Lazio fires falconer for posting photos of his penis implants.
What?
This was a story that caught my eye. And you know how in the morning you sometimes read a headline and you're like, am I hallucinating or is this real?
Yeah. And you go back and read it later. Yeah, just to make sure.
It is, and I read it. I'll read it for you here. From the AP. This is an AP story, by the way, from the official AP. Lazio has fired the man who handled the Italian soccer club's eagle mascot after he posted photos and videos of his own prosthetic penis. Falconer Joan Barnaby, I don't know how to pronounce that, sorry Italians, shared the image on his private social media account after undergoing surgery for a penile implant, which he said was for non-medical reasons. Burnaby also gave an interview to controversial Italian radio show La Zanzara on Monday and elaborated for his reasons for undergoing the procedure. He added that he felt very proud and, quote, more masculine being a part of Lazio. The Series A club clearly did not feel the same as it fired the Spaniard shortly afterward. So, what do you think about this so far? Is this cancel culture or not cancel culture? What's your thought?
Well, I'm guessing he posted it on OnlyFans, right? Because that would be...
let's see. It doesn't say where he posted them.
Yeah, but maybe Twitter or X. I mean, they...
yeah, where else would he put it, right?
And that's really weird to post something like that.
It is, yes.
I would have thought that he would kept it, like, hey, don't tell anybody. I got a penis implant.
But why would you get a penis implant if it wasn't for other people, right? That's the thing.
Maybe he was on his way to divorce and kind of that was his last option.
Let's just check it out, yeah. Oh, let's see. Continuing on, quote, shocked to see photographic images of Mr. Juan Barnaby and to read the statements that accompanied them, Lazio announced that it has stopped with immediate effect all relationship with this person, given the seriousness of his behavior. The Capital Club said in a statement.
That's very brief.
It is very brief. But it gets better, though.
Uh-huh.
And it's kind of a shocking twist.
Mm-hmm.
Lazio suspended Barnaby in 2021 when he was filmed performing a fascist salute at the end of a match and chanting Dolce Dolce, which was the name used to praise former Italian fascist leader Benito Mussolini. I admire him so much, Barnaby added on Monday's radio interview.
Oh, wow.
So in a shocking twist, it goes back to fascism. And that was the very last sentence of the article. That one was thank you to the AP for writing that story. But I don't think APs are credited, but I'll give this person a shout out if they have a byline, which I don't see. But that was a good article, and that lifted my week, so thank you very much.
So they didn't fire him for doing the fascist Nazi whatever salute?
Yeah, that was not the reason. That was not the
They
reason.
fired him for posting a picture of his penis.
Yes.
Wow.
And there's something that's very 21st century about that.
Yeah.
You could be a fascist, but penis, that's too much. Can't do that. But that's very conservative, now that I think about it.
That's definitely the kind of story you're thinking. I think I need to wake up, get myself a cup of coffee, and read it again, and make sure that this is well, man.
I don't really know how I feel about this. In all honesty, on the merits of it all, I suppose is it illegal to post pictures of your penile implant? No, but it all comes down to his employment contract, right, and what that said about what his grounds for potentially firing him were. It's probably an at-will contract or just a game-by-game contract. So they are probably in legal standing to do so, but I don't know. I don't think he deserved it on account of posting pictures of his prosthetic.
Yeah, it's not like he was, flashing or something. I mean, he was just maybe writing a review.
Exactly. It's outside of work. It's off the clock penile showing.
Yeah. I mean, what if you wanted to review the surgeon?
That's true. How do you do
This
that?
is a finished product. You're fired. What?
Totally. Well, I'm just trying to help out my guy. My medical guy. I wonder how much that costs in Italy too, because Italy has some. They have some socialized medicine. The doctor doesn't cost a whole lot, so
Yeah.
that would also be interesting.
What do these doctors like think when they go to school and they're like, yeah, I want to repair penises?
Yeah, I don't know. And sometimes they're not even repairs. Sometimes the guys want to get a boost, and that's what they do it for. That's actually probably most of what it is.
Oh.
Yeah, penile implants are pretty bad stuff. They went over some more penile implant stories on an episode of Chapo one day, but it's bad. It hurts, and it's oftentimes goes wrong. So I don't know how these people are allowed to do this.
It's interesting. Money
Money talks.
Yeah.
But so unnecessary in my opinion, and it probably should be illegal. Would be my opinion of it.
I mean, like, so many plastic surgeries are just so unnecessary. I mean, you look at, I mean, I don't know, as far as like breast implants, that's fine. Kind of up to a point. Sometimes it's just atrocious. Honestly, like, you got hair transplants, that's also kind of plastic surgery.
That's true.
But I mean, these two are kind of like, okay, I can understand, but there's like, well, that one I'm not even sure if it's a plastic. It's like if you want to get taller, to break your bone and let it heal in a certain way, and you'll gain a couple of inches or something like that in height. I don't even know if that's plastic. That's
and that's just like a bone. That's a bone osteo surgery.
Yeah.
The bone guys, osteopathy.
Yeah, sounds like a construction
that
accident.
stuff is
right.
Yeah, and it's like construction equipment that they use on your bones there to saw them in half or whatever they do. I think they split it like a splice. I don't know, and I don't want to know. I've seen the animations on Instagram, unfortunately.
Oh, you have, okay.
It's just medical. There's a couple interesting things about this. One, it's like this is kind of like a very typical liberal versus conservative battle. Like, conservatives would say, oh, you shouldn't be allowed to do any of those things, and liberals would be like, it's your own body, it's your choice, you should be able to do those things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of a gross oversimplification, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah. But I think there's a balance, not to be that guy, not to be Mr. Centrist, but
Yeah.
if it's a relatively safe thing, then I don't think it should be illegal. That's like, but something like a penis implant is so dangerous, and then it leads to complications so often that I just don't think the juice is worth the squeeze there, and it probably should be illegal.
Yeah, I never knew they were that common, to be honest. I had no idea.
I don't know how common they are, but people do get them. There are clinics that specialize in that. And then again, it's like the glaring part about plastic surgery is like, well, there are people who need real medical help, not just implants. I mean, I get reconstructive surgery is a different thing, but it's also like there are people who are suffering. They probably could use that medical care, but no, there's no money in that, and that's the whole frustrating part about America and capitalism in general. Like, the more real stuff you do or make or help people, the less you get paid. Like ER doctors who save probably dozens of lives a month, if not more, they don't make half of what a stupid plastic surgeon makes,
100%.
Make this falconer's penis larger.
100%. Yeah, and it seems like that's the case across, like you said, across everything else. It's good, honest work doesn't get you very far.
No, it doesn't. And I have no idea why it's so inverted that way. It's like, and you see this in any workplace. Like, if you touch something like with your hands and that's your job, you're not going to get paid as much as a person who doesn't touch anything but a keyboard and a mouse.
100%. 100%. And guess who gets the job done? It's those who work with their hands.
Exactly.
I was chatting with a friend of mine, and we previously worked together, but he's also a neighbor. So, like, I haven't seen him in a long time. Hey, how are you? Where you work now? And, we all went our separate ways. But we were just talking about how I was telling him about a job site that I was at, and how, like, safety was just not a thing. They never heard of it. I saw, like, really scary things. But then he said, but man, without the technicians, these projects don't get done. And I'm like, 100%. 100%. That's the case, and they make less. And then there's that field versus office relationship. It's always tense, and it's tense for that reason. It's because the technicians know that they're doing the work, and then the people in the office get the credit.
So how open is that tension? Is it commented on? Is it like directly spoken from the technicians to the office, or is it just kind of implicit?
No, you kind of have to make them feel safe talking around you, and just be like, oh yeah, man, I agree. Even if you work in the office, you're going to the field one day. They start talking shit. You're like, oh yeah, man, fuck those office people, even though you're an office guy. And once they feel safe, they'll start telling you everything.
I've worked in workplaces where it's been more open and workplaces where it's been less open. The current place I work now, there's the same tension, obviously, and the same conflict of interest between what the people who work upstairs, in my case, and the people who work on the floor, what they want. But you really can't speak of it. And that's where I think liberalism and capitalism are very much intertwined. Because, I work in a liberal city doing blue-collar factory work to keep it anonymous. And they're very liberal in the way that they conduct themselves and talk, even though it's a factory, which is kind of odd. But I've worked in other places for big logistics companies, and that tension was very open. And if, the workers screwed up and they get literally yelled at, and if the manager screwed up, they get yelled at. And it was just, I found that to be a more honest experience.
Yeah.
Because at least the tension was open, and the guys were talking about all the bullshit that they have to do. But at this job, it's like, everybody's pretending like they're on the same team or something, but they're not. There's the people who get the money out of you and the people who make the money. And the people who, make the product don't make the money. And it's frustrating.
Yeah, but it's definitely, it seems like it's healthier maybe to have that open, you mentioned for the previous job, have that kind of open policy where, you don't bottle things up. Come one day to the office and shoot people.
Well, yeah. I wonder which one of those attitudes is more likely to produce that. Because if you're open about it, at least you can get it out, in a healthy way. If you kind of bottle it up, it just bottling stuff up doesn't result in good things. Either remove yourself or be honest.
Yeah, no, it results in mass shootings.
Yeah, it does. It probably does. I wonder if all the mass shooters have felt similar ways about things. Well, maybe not similar to the way we think about it, but if they've felt these tensions and they didn't know how to realize it. But that's life. That's what, growing up is about. It's about putting on a face. That's why you're in school, You have to be on your best behavior. Is that you? No, but that's where you spend the plurality of your
100%. Life. They educate for obedience.
And the better you obey in real life, the further you'll go.
Yeah. Professor Chomsky talks about that. And he says that's the school system. It's it basically submits you over time, and the one who gets the higher grades is the more obedient one, basically.
In college, though, it's a little bit different, and that's why I like the academy so much. In college, if you disagree with your professor, then you'll still get a good grade, as long as you articulate it well. And I've disagreed with many professors, and I was a straight A student, so.
I see.
Well, A- student.
Well, that's good having these kind of professors. That's pretty good. That's what the whole experience should be about. Disagreeing, give you that. It's become kind of a taboo word, but you give you a safe space to explore, because if you keep it just the same everywhere, there will be no change. There will be no progress. It'll just be stagnation, or even go backwards. And it's interesting because of what we saw happen on college campuses, and to professors too. And it's ongoing. I haven't heard of major protests in the winter or in the fall, last fall. I'm not sure about now, but they cracked down on that Professor Finkelstein called it, it's the most blatant attack on academia, and it's far more significant than people think.
It is very significant. I mean, you saw, university presidents get ousted, whatever that word means, but they got canned. They got fired for their position on free speech. That whole proceeding a year ago really pissed me off. I lost sleep over how much that was insane. But
yeah,
I mean, oh, it's all kind of storming up in my brain. I don't remember any details.
What's funny is even the ones who buckled and obeyed and practically banned these protests ended up losing their jobs. Like that lady, what was her name? Minouche, something like that. When she got questioned by Congress?
Yeah, it was Congress.
She completely buckled. She defended nothing. She, she probably had no idea that that's what universities are for.
Yeah, and the thing that really pissed me off about those hearings is that presidents were asked to make excuses for things that weren't happening, and they were caught completely off guard, which made it look like they had no spine, but in reality, they were being confronted with lies.
100%.
Like, the Congress people were like, is it allowed to shout death to all Jews on your campus? And they would come up with some stupid answer of like, we don't have that in front of us. Well, they should have said, that didn't happen, you idiot. That's not happening on our campuses. And it never did. It never did. I've never seen that sort of anti-Semitism on college campuses.
No.
Never.
No. Well, I mean, and the thing is, a lot of the protesters are Jews.
Yes, they are. Exactly. It was Jewish Voice for Peace in my college town that was the biggest organizer, the biggest sort of ally.
There you go. But then
they organized the encampment.
There you go. And if you noticed, when even like outside of college protests, you could tell which ones were done by Jewish Voice for Peace because they have their own style, I guess, of protesting. It's different than once you go to a Palestinian-led protest, for example, the ones in downtown and stuff like that. They were different. They did it. They had this up liberation, down occupation thing. I mean, you could tell this was actually Jewish Voice for Peace. But these people, it's amazing. It's amazing. It is amazing how they can gaslight and people just keep nodding and moving forward. It is crazy, absolutely crazy. And guess what? Now, the spearhead of these shameful hearings was what's her name? Elsie Stefanik.
Oh yeah, Stefanik. Yeah.
And guess what she's gonna do now in the Trump administration?
What is she doing?
Elsie Stefanik, but she's UN ambassador.
Oh really? Huh. Well, really why did she resign? I mean, I thought she was doing well in Congress, but that's not your fault. But
yeah.
But she was like a rising star in the Republican Party, and to take a UN ambassador position, that's like what Nikki Haley gets relegated to. It's not, you don't come back from that, really.
No, no. And here's the headline of Fox News. Trump's pick for UN ambassador hailed by Israeli minister as a warrior against anti-Semitism. Yeah, exactly. Anti-Semitism.
What's really all maddening about all of this is like how there's no mainstream voice of truth that like will push back on this. And it's not the fact that it's necessarily anti-Semitism that this is being wielded on. It's the fact that it's such a lie that has just become reality. And you have to just operate in this reality. You have to surrender to it. Otherwise, you're going to get canceled or accidentally unalive yourself with 3 bullets to the back of the head or something from Assad.
I mean, they definitely, there's so many ways they can literally make a lie a complete reality. I mean, we saw that with the Iraq War, for example.
Oh yeah, and to go back to the anti-Semitism, I was doing regular protests during the time when the college campus protests were gaining steam, and that whole media narrative just swept in, and you were powerless to fight it. Really, people would make fun of us because we protested over a freeway, so we had a bunch of banners that said "End Genocide" and a whole bunch of stuff about love. Almost nothing about Israel. It was all like "Stop killing the children" sort of stuff. Really unoffensive. It wasn't anything that was controversial or groundbreaking, even in that world. But the people would give us the Hail Hitler salute as a way of like saying that we're anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, like, I wonder what Jews think about that. Because with friends like that, you better not have any enemies. Which is like, ironically enough, people doing that sort of Hitler salute, that is like literally the most anti-Semitic thing I've ever seen with my own two eyes. Yeah. And they were doing it at us. Yeah, it was very confusing.
You're alluding to the Musk, right? Heil salute, Nazi salute thing.
Well, yes, that's a good transition there. Yes, we can talk about the actual anti-Semite in our government now.
Yeah, the head of the Doge. Who's defending Musk's double Nazi salute? The ADL.
Really?
Yes. And it looks like the ADL nowadays is who determines what is anti-Semitic and what's not. It's not, has nothing to do with hatred for Jews or, because Arabs are Semitic too, and nobody's talking about the genocide. That's pretty anti-Semitic, I think. But the all the tools they have in the media and the internet makes it very easy. And you look at who controls a lot of the information we get today and who censors it. And you realize, well, the news is coming from a couple of sources, really, if you trace it back to the top.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they make a reality. They can tell you, I can guarantee you, if you wanted, they could, and this is just an example of how much power I think they have. They can make the next president a Muslim sheikh with like a beard, if they wanted to, They can turn Americans into like Muslim loving people. I really think so. I think that's how this like strong and good the grip they have and like how they can manipulate public opinion, spreading of lies, memes. I have this game on my phone. It's called Plague, and it shows you how like a government can spread or basically spread news and try to make a lie basically believed by everybody. And the options that it shows you, and even though it's a game, but it's kind of a simulation. And so the things that they have on the list, for example, how they like spread these news, word to mouth, memes, influencers, bot networks, fake experts, viral chat messages, data fabrication, media outreach, TV, talk shows, politicians, exploiting institutions. And, when I play that game, I look at it, I'm like, Israel did every single one of these things and is doing every single one of these things. But you can't point it out because I'll call you anti-Semitic, even if you say that. At one point...
Exactly.
At one point... Well, for me, it lost its meaning a long time ago, but I feel like at one point people should be able to say, okay, enough with this. You guys are going crazy. If, it becomes, hey, if I sneeze and there's a Jew next to me, you call me anti-Semitic. Like, wait a minute.
Oh yeah, and they totally overuse it, and then it becomes meaningless. And they use it on the left too, but any of the actual anti-Semitism in the America is on the right. It always is. If anything, it's like certain Jewish individuals as a group make up the left. I know quite a lot of leftist Jews. It's because of a number of reasons, but it's not, anti-Semitism is not piloting the left. That's for sure. But it's very frustrating getting called an anti-Semite all the time. And then that's where I feel like I'm being gaslit. It's like, because you are the subject of other people's definitions, right? Mm-hmm. And if the consensus changes and you really can't fight that in a way. And if someone says that you are something, you kind of just are. Yeah. And that's how power works. That's how real power works, where you have to conform or be in the outs.
It's like sometimes you hear about somebody who was jailed And sometimes these people are innocent. I'm not saying all the time, but sometimes some people are innocent. But the media also plays a part in determining whether that guy's guilty or not. Yeah, it's kind of similar, I feel like, to, you say somebody's guilty. It's kind of like what happened to Jeremy Corbyn in the UK.
Exactly what happened to Jeremy Corbyn, where he gets declared anti-Semite of the year literal days before a general election. And he doesn't have an anti-Semitic bone in his body. That's what was really, like, they assassinated that man by all intents and purposes. Like,
he never recovered.
No, he didn't.
So powerful.
And he had a beard too. That's what I really miss about him. I mean, I think he's working with DM25 or something. Like, he's still around, but he just got completely stripped of his power and outed.
He started backtracking too, and I feel like you shouldn't do that. You should just kind of stand your ground.
Yeah, you should. You should say what you stand for. We condemn anti-Semitism, and I'm not anti-Semitic.
Right.
This is a ridiculous investigation.
Right. Kind of be like George Galloway. Kind of, he never, I haven't seen him, take a step back from one of, even though he's probably declared an anti-Semite by Israel. I mean, everybody's anti-Semite by Israel standards. Yeah, poor guy.
I can shed some light on what all is happening here. So I think the ADL they're sucking up to power, right? And Israel's interests generally lie with the powerful states that can protect them.
Yeah.
In their precarious position in the Middle East. So everybody's kind of willing to make bedfellows here in order to protect Israel, right? Even though elements of the right are actually anti-Semitic, which is not the case on the left at all.
Yeah.
But the Israeli national interest would prefer to cuddle up to the right, even though you have to deal with Elon Musk and his salutes, than they would the left, because the right has power, and that's what they need, is power. That's the only thing they need. They can't survive on anything else. And just to give it some color here, I'm looking at the ADL's comments.
Yeah.
The ADL said, quote, "All sides should give one another a bit of grace." That's what they said. They also said, "This is a delicate moment. It's a new day, yet so many are on edge. Our politics are inflamed, and social media only adds to the anxiety."
Right.
So you can clearly see here, like, they're restraining themselves. They're holding back. I mean, how many times have we seen the ADL just put people on blast for less,
100%.
than a literal
100%.
And they do it because he's powerful, and they can't piss him off, because then he might turn Trump against them, and then they won't have an in to get Israel the support that they need in the region. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Just my opinion.
I have a slightly different take on it. I think, like, they know that the target of Elon Musk's Zeke Heil is not Israel or Jews. I think it is more directed towards migrants, non-Jewish migrants, possibly more like Arab Muslim migrants, and to a lesser level Latino migrants from Mexico. I don't think that's directed towards them, but I feel like ADL is fully aware of that, and they'll say, we'll allow Nazism as long as it's against the people we don't like.
You're right. I think that's also a valid interpretation of it. I don't remember the exact context in which he did this. I should probably look that up, but they've really scapegoated a certain group of people that I have no problem with. So
yeah,
and it's a tragedy, and you should never underestimate the lengths that they will go to mask their own exploitation. I mean, and this is history. Well, we're not stupid. Like, we've seen this happen before. Right? You scapegoat out groups for the exploitation that the actual powerful, and that's what he's doing again. And it's just insane that these billionaires are in government inflaming these things. It's absolute insanity. I don't think there's any real recovery from this, but
no,
we could at least speak the truth about it.
100%. And I feel like we're at a point where it's kind of hard to ignore anymore. I mean, you have the concentration of pretty much every single anti-immigrant coalition now. They're all together, basically, with all their money and media and all of the power and the police, military, and everything. And everybody's like, migrants. They're the reason for the economic downfall. They're the reason for they're invading us. We've become a third world country and all of that. So it's interesting. Like, I heard about ICE raids. I've been hearing about them for the past couple of days. I wonder if it's gonna stop to illegals, because a lot of the migrants are actually legal. But it's not about legality. It's about who comes in and who doesn't. We don't want...
Exactly. You don't even need like any sort of actual violence to chill people. It's just about the threat,
Yeah, I mean, some people, albeit might be a minority, will start leaving once they feel like this is the environment that they are now living in, and it's not a very friendly environment. It's not comfortable. Some people will leave. Those who will get deported. But then you'll still have a group of people who came here legally, who might already be like citizens, and at that point they'll play they supported Hamas. Well, they went out on protests. We have to give me your citizenship and leave the country, go back to where you came from, kind of thing.
Exactly. And that's a very dangerous road to go down, because once you start making people stateless, well, that's what happened in Germany in the 40s.
Yep.
Right? When you deprive someone of their citizenship, no one is there to protect them. They're under no legal protection. They have no country, right? And no one can inquire about them or is responsible for them. They're superfluous, as Hannah Arendt would say.
Yeah.
And what I think will happen to a lot of migrants that are here illegally is that, they're working, obviously. So I think they're just going to be detained, but keep working, because you can't not have them work. It just the economy wouldn't work. You can't just deprive the economy of that many laborers. Yeah. So I think they'll be slaves, essentially. They're just going to be detained and, okay, keep doing your job, but you're now under federal detention. Mm-hmm. Something like that. Maybe there's laws that, but where we're going, we don't need laws,
Yeah.
Where this country is headed, laws, they don't have the same sort of gravitas as they used to.
Mm-hmm. No, it's it's not a nice... it doesn't sound good, but... And, so sometimes I wonder, like, if all immigrants just decide to pick up and leave tomorrow, let's say, you wake up, there's no migrants anymore. The country would collapse, literally, At
the very least, there'd be no strawberries on the shelves.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm not saying overrun the country with migrants, but at the same time, I'm not saying they're the cause of all the troubles.
No, they're not a cause, but they are a symptom of capitalism trying to get cheaper and cheaper labor. I mean, the French have done that a lot in colonial times. They'd import laborers and then deport them once they weren't needed anymore. But I mean, really, you should, if people are doing a necessary job, you should pay them a normal amount of money, a living amount of money. You shouldn't need to have people who are here undocumented so that the law can't protect them from being exploited. That's why people are undocumented. That's why they're still around. Mm-hmm. If undocumented people were bad for the economy, then they would have deported them by now, right?
100%.
It's because they're so cheap and they don't require services. They can't get them.
Yeah.
They don't cost anything.
Dr. Richard Wolff's take on this is, he says, if you have an undocumented migrant who's working in the field or something, he can't even if you don't pay him, let's say, he can't go file a complaint or something like that. He's undocumented. He's afraid if he goes there, he's gonna get arrested. So there's that exploitation, and I wonder how the right sees that. How do they see the balance? Do they just want slaves? Or, I mean, because the left, I think, is at peace with that idea that, hey, this is what we have, and this is good, that it keeps prices low. It's, we don't...
Liberals.
Yeah, the liberals. But But I wonder what's the right take on that. Like, what do they think if they want to deport all these people? What are they gonna do? What will be? What's the alternative? They have another plan. Do they think like groceries will just show up at the grocery store?
I think they would say that Americans will just do those jobs. The jobs that these Americans have been deprived of for so long. And to that, I'd say you would be facing a revolution if American citizens were doing these jobs for these wages. Should we touch on the ceasefire?
Yeah, let's do that. A ceasefire deal. Netanyahu finally agreed to a ceasefire deal. Many people that say that, and I think this is what the reality is that this is the same deal that was agreed on in May. So I since I don't believe in the numbers of people killed in Gaza, I think I'm more aligned with Ralph Nader's estimate, just because now after the ceasefire, people are they feel more safe going to under the rubbles and looking for people. Some are going back to their homes or to the location of what used to be their home, and they're finding clothes, IDs, skulls, stuff like that, or remains of their loved ones. And Ralph Nader did, I think, a good job estimating what the real number was, and this was back in, I believe it was in October when I heard this, and he said we're probably closer to 180 to 200,000 Gazans murdered. He said if we don't have a ceasefire by the end of the year, which we're about a month over now, he was estimating that we would probably be looking at around 500,000 dead. He's including the people who are dying indirectly, but because of the war. For example, diabetics who can't get medications, dialysis patients who, Israel basically destroyed all the kidney centers in Gaza, all the cancer centers in Gaza, all the medication storages. They left them with nothing. It was amazing. Really, it used to be when you bomb one hospital, that would follow you for the rest of your life. It's not the case. They went, and that's what's dangerous about this. They're setting an example for the rest of the world. Like, hey, no, if you have the power, you can fuck international laws. Basically, what they're saying. But now with this ceasefire, people are going back, but what are they going back to? I'm not sure. Anyway, he finally agreed to that. They're releasing Israeli soldiers now. So not civilians. I'm guessing they did release all the civilians previously. So honestly, I'm surprised that there are still hostages or prisoners alive. I'm fine with calling them hostages if you want to call the Palestinians hostages, and I'm fine. But otherwise, I'll call them prisoners. But yeah, I'm honestly surprised they're still alive, and I'm surprised they haven't found them, the Israelis, with all their surveillance and intelligence and robotics, drones, and
and it's not a very large area too. It's basically the size of a city. It's like 30 miles long.
Yeah, it's like 25 by 5.
Yeah, that's not very. That's like a medium-sized island, and they couldn't find their hostages in the midst of all that.
Yeah,
it's shockingly incompetent, I will say. I really hope that the ceasefire holds, but I just find it hard to imagine good things, frankly. So
yeah, I'm not sure if it'll hold, just because the actual goals of this genocide is to clear out Gaza. Whether that means killing everybody or deporting everybody, putting them on ships and do like the Nazis did. I'm not sure how that's gonna work out.
What's really disturbing is that what the Nazis were trying to do with the Jews before they came up with their final solution. They had a number of other solutions. The final one was the one that we're all familiar with, but there was a number of plans to put all the Jews, let them live peacefully in some abandoned place in Poland or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Or Israel, actually, believe it or not. That was a kind of a plan, but Israel back then was a British territory, and the British weren't working with the Nazis at the time, so they didn't allow it to happen, which is kind of shocking that we're in the place we are now. And it was called Palestine back then too, but
yeah,
I digress. So I think that's probably what the realistic, I think the best thing that we can realistically aim for is a resettlement of all Palestinians. Not that's what I think is ideal, or aim is probably the wrong word, but I think that's the best possible outcome. And I mean possible as in like what will actually happen, not what I want to happen.
Mm-hmm. So what would that be again?
The resettlement of Gaza.
Oh, yeah. You know, I've talked to Palestinians about this before, and some of them are, you know, I've talked to friends. You know, I'm honestly, I'm like careful trying to choose what I would say about them. I don't want to put them in danger, nor do I want to put myself in danger. But I've asked them before, like friends and living in the West Bank. I said, you guys' life is a living hell, and this was way before October. This is like 5 years ago. You know, and I said, you guys' life is a living hell. Why don't you leave? And you know, there's a lot of it's expensive to move, very expensive. And given that the Israelis are choking the Palestinians economically, there's not that, you don't have that freedom of movement. So you can't even, and on top of that, nobody recognizes, like, what are you going to do? You have a passport, you have a Palestinian passport, you're trying to travel. Good luck getting visas anywhere. So it is, it's a very difficult situation, but I kept trying to, you know, convince, because, you know, he's a friend and I didn't want to see him hurt. And then he said,
Yeah, that's true.
You know what, this is our land. We're not leaving. I never asked him again after that. I was like, okay, this guy, he has more courage than me. I would have left, and more power to them, man. More power to them. What they do, what the Israelis do in the West Bank, or what they have been doing in the West Bank, and you can see that on the maps on Google. They've been basically creating these islands of Palestinians. So they would, for example, surround a certain area and they would turn it into an island. And they would do the same thing to the neighboring area. In other words, they would isolate areas and disconnect them. And then they would say, you're free to move. We're not restraining your movements. But how are you supposed to get from A to B?
Exactly.
If they've disconnected all the roads between A to B and kept you on an island. And
if this were to happen, it would have to be like an international effort, because that's 2 million people. You can't move all of them, you know, individually, right? You can't just have them pack themselves up. It would have to be like a massive effort to relocate all these people. And it would have to rely on a home country that would receive them and set up things to either integrate them or give them their own territory, which countries don't want to give up territory. And the inter-Middle Eastern politics are in such a way that I don't know much about it, but it's hard to imagine a country saying, yeah, here's an equivalent. But the thing is, if they're moving from Gaza is pretty small, but it's also like oceanfront, so that does have, and I'm not saying that in a crass way, but like there are advantages to living near the sea, that it's rare in the Middle East to have that. And actually it's rare all over the world. That's why like 80% of the world's population lives near a river or some body of fresh water. So I don't have a plan necessarily, but that's how it would have to go down. It would be some sort of compromise like that. And then the Palestinians may or may not be in a better situation. They're not subject to bombs, but then they're a minority and an exception in a foreign land, and that's tough too.
Well, they've already gave so many compromises.
Yeah.
They made so many concessions before that. I mean, there's like, for example, Jordan's population is about, I think, maybe 60% Palestinian. It's because Jordan absorbed a lot of Palestinian refugees from 1948 and then 1967. Iraq, did have a decent Palestinian community, but they all left after the 2003 invasion. Lebanon, especially South Lebanon, has a decent Palestinian community, and Egypt as well. So they have been
Yeah, you're right.
moving. They have been, but it's like how many and the U.S. by the way, if you go to Illinois,
Really?
huge Palestinian community. Oh yeah, oh yeah. So they're all over the world. They're in Canada. They're in Europe.
There's Palestinians. I mean, pretty much everywhere. There's Palestinians in Bellingham. There's Palestinians around here. It's in Seattle, like because they do the rallies, obviously. So they're some of them live around here.
Yeah,
I know some of the other ones too. So they've already like put across the earth, but it's very traumatizing to be put away from your territory. Your land that your people, your group has worked for thousands of years now, be thrown off into some other place. It's like some percent of individuals will always do that or be okay with it. That's just what happens.
yeah.
But it's hard to convince. Well, one, it's hard to convince millions of people to do that, and it's equally as hard to find a place for them to go. That's what's really tough about all this, and that's what's tough about genocides in general. Is like it's not obviously what everyone wants to do, and it's not an ideal solution, but it happens again and again and again, and we've not found a good way to avoid it. That's what's tragic about it, and there is like genocide studies and stuff. So, but
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we would love the Palestinians and Israelis to coexist one territory, and they could have some holidays together or something. I don't know, but
They, the thing that gets me is there's room for both of them to exist on the same land. Like, let's say you're born in Tel Aviv or Haifa. I can understand when you say this is my home. This is where you were born. That's all. That's everything. That's all you knew. I feel like it's when they're born here and initially during the the beginnings of Jewish migration to mandate Palestine and then the 1948 they both lived. The Palestinians, from what I heard, from what I've seen, is that they welcomed the Jewish migrants. They didn't have a problem with them until they started shooting them. It's like, wait a minute, I welcome you here, now I'm in your crosshairs, like, and but there is definitely room for both of them to coexist. But hey, it's that supremacy mindset that
it is.
I'm better than everybody. I don't want to see you. You're inferior. Everybody's inferior to the Israelis. That's what they believe. But you think about the what's going on the ground right now. I was reading an article yesterday that Israel is now controlling, I forget what it was, maybe 40% of Syria's water resources.
And now they've been invading Syria.
Now they're annexing Syrian land. And I don't know. Ceasefire in Gaza, that would be nice for the people of Gaza to finally catch their breath and take a break. But I don't think it'll end. This is it'll resume in Lebanon. It'll resume in I mean, it is going on in Syria right now, and I don't think it'll even stop there. Israelis think Jordan is also their land, of course. Half of Iraq, all of Kuwait, half of Saudi Arabia, and the Sinai all the way to the River Nile. That's what they believe. You know who saw this a very long time ago? Muammar Gaddafi. Yeah. He was when he said that during like press conferences and summits, everybody was like laughing, like this guy's talking about, Israelis don't want all of this. Israelis will never come after Jordan or Syria or Lebanon. What are you talking about? Crazy guy. But yeah.
It is, and it's a really bad look for Israel too. I mean, they're doing all that, so it's like We're just telling the truth here.
Do you think there's any meaningful international pressure on Israel right now, or maybe do you foresee that?
It's hard to tell. These things can take a long time, but a lot of the rest of the world is not happy with Israel. That's a real thing. There is that, and if they're putting themselves in danger, then that's also bad. But it seems like their air defenses are working pretty well, and Iran doesn't have the capability that everyone thought in order to be an enforcer in the region. So, not really. If there's no physical military threat to Israel, they're fine. They're in a fine position. Their economy has not been doing very well, and long term, I don't think it's going to work out very well because there's a generation of young men who committed to genocide. So they're not going to be okay long term, and I don't know if the people of Israel will be okay long term. Mentally, like how do you do that? Like how do Israeli citizens conduct international trade? How do they go to New York and Los Angeles and all these places and like be proud of their country? But that doesn't necessarily make a country any worse off in the long run. Well, it does, but it's hard to quantify that.
Yeah. What's sad is that Jews lived in peace before the establishment of the state of Israel. Jews lived in peace in the Middle East. I know my own grandparents tell me about their Jewish neighbors and doctors and pharmacists and shop owners and stuff like that, and they were my grandparents still talk or speak fondly of them when they talk about them. They never actually, it's funny, my grandma, if she's ever heard anybody saying the Jews are doing this, she would be the first one to jump and say, no, those are Zionists, not Jews. And she's been saying that for a while. Like every time somebody says something like that, they're like, no. She's like, I know Jews. Jews were my neighbors. Jews were my pharmacist. A Jew doctor was, I used to go to a Jewish doctor, and she knows them by name, and she remembers where they were, and all of these things. My grandpa had always tells me to.
And where does this take place?
Iraq. My grandpa always tells me this story about his Jewish teacher who was crying because he had to move to Israel, and he didn't want to. He loved students and all these things, and so I don't think there was ever a diversity problem.
Right, and that's the frustrating part, because those were Arab Jews, and they've been involved in that part of the world and integrated that way. But the Jews who came to Israel were displaced from the Holocaust, but they were fundamentally European. That was their world. That was their sensibility, and their mindset was Europe. That's all they knew. And for 1,000 years, that's all they knew. Their traces to Israel were suspect at the very best. And there was tensions even between the Israeli settlers in the late 40s and the Arab Jews that were already there about how they were going 100%. About things.
Under completely different mindset.
It was. It's just, it's very tough. And Israel has become the center of the world in a way, really. The center of, this all goes back to not only capitalism, but just the whole Western mindset throughout the past 200 years has all sort of led up to Israel. But that's a story for a different time.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, very interesting. All right. Well, seems like a good stopping point, everybody. Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Nothing comes to mind right now.
Yeah, same. But I wish the Palestinians peace and security, as always. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. See you next time.
See ya.